On a mission given to me by Woody Shaw, Sunship, Dizzy, and John Kahn, dedicated to pursuing a piece of our cultural heritage through interviews with my music heroes, this is The Jake Feinberg Show. Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on KEVT Power Talk 1210 AM. Sarah Rita Tucson, Mike Roper, engineering across the way. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And it is now my honor to bring in a titan of the tenor saxophone, a guy who's been doing it for over 50 years, a melodic improviser in his own right. Odean Pope, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Sir, I'm right here.
How are you, brother?
I'm very good, sir. How are you today, this windy day?
Well, is it windy in Philadelphia? Yeah, you must be getting drilled out there.
We're getting drilled, man. It's really bad.
Well, let's hope the connection stays up, because I have been searching for Odean for quite some time. I'm not sure if you heard that intro clip or not.
I did hear Giant Steps by the Max Roach Quartet.
You darn believe it, with Tyrone Brown on bass, playing that thing like, I think he was playing electric bass.
Yeah, he's playing the little electric upright.
So it was like a blitz bass kind of thing? I mean, I can't even visualize the electric upright.
Yeah, well, it's about 4 feet, and he sat down and played it.
You know, I got to tell you, Odean, I wanted to start by asking you, did you ever have a chance to play with John Coltrane?
Of course. We used to practice together.
Can you talk about...
As a matter of fact,
go ahead.
Train gave me my first job when I was 17 years old. He went with Miles Davis, and he called me up and asked me would I continue the gig with Jimmy Smith. They were playing at a place called Spotted Tellers here in Philadelphia. And he asked me to replace him. So I said, well, man, are you sure you're talking about me playing with Jimmy Smith? Because I was 17, and I said, this is unbelievable. It's hard to think that you're calling me to replace you. I said, I don't think I'd be able to do that. So he said, look, never think you can never do something. Always say you can do something. So from that point, that gave me a lesson that never say you can't do something. You always can do it.
Can you tell me the name of the...
As a matter of fact, we used to play with a piano player by the name of Hassan Emanali. Train lived on 33rd Street, and I lived between 17 and 18. And we used to get together at his house as well as Hassan and Manala's house. And we would get together and play and exchange ideas, and he would always pass all the very important information down to me. And I just felt very blessed to be able to play with this great man.
All right, two things, Odean, because I took a chance. I'm like, he might have played with Train. You've gone a lot farther by saying you practiced with, you really woodshedded with him. But what was the name of the club that you were playing at with him?
Club called, I replaced him at Spotted Killers in Philadelphia.
And what was it? The Mafia Run Club? What was that?
It was a club that had 6 nights.
Right.
And a matinee on Friday. And it was in Center City. It's no longer there. But it was a very popular club. Everybody on Friday, they made a point to be there at the matinee because there was something very special going on there every Friday.
I wanted to talk to you specifically about in those sessions when you guys were practicing together. Can you talk specific? I mean, Train, I just got off the phone. I interviewed Marty Ballin yesterday, and again, this is a guy who created Jefferson Airplane, one of the psychedelic rock bands from San Francisco. He's talking about seeing Train at Basin Street West. This is with the quartet, I believe, or with Pharaoh, and Train would not put his horn down. He might take a solo, go to the bar, get a drink, but he's still playing his solo. Him and Pharaoh were trading lines back and forth. He might go to the bathroom. He's still playing his horn. I mean, the guy always had his horn in his mouth, but I wanted you on the inside to talk about those sessions, woodshedding with Train, and ultimately what he taught you about how to transcend, how ultimately you can transcend with the music.
Well, Train, first of all, he was very open. He was very giving. He was a very humble man. He was very peaceful. He was an educator. He was everything that you can think good. Train was that. He was very peaceful. He was very caring. And he used to share ideas and concepts with me. Him and I used to get together and just play. And the first thing we would do for about 2 hours, just play nothing but scales. Mm-hmm. That was his thing, is to play scales, chromatic scales, major scales, octaves, long tones. For 2 hours, we would just do that. And I learned so much from that because what that entailed would enable you to play all over your instrument. We would play scales from low B flat. The tenor saxophone is 2 octaves and a fifth, for those who might not be familiar with that. But we used to play from the low B flat all the way up to the high F on scales, major scales, minor scales, augmented scales, diminished scales, double diminished scales. We would play all of the different kinds of scales. And what that would do, that would really open you up to be able to play in tune all over your instrument.
That is absolutely well put. I mean, would you say? I mean, I remember, interviewing a pianist, Mark Levine, and he would go see Jackie Byard at Berkeley, and their lessons would consist of Mark would get on the piano, Jackie would get on the drum kit, and he'd say, "All right, I want you to play this tune in all 12, in all the keys." And at a certain point, Mark would fall apart, and then Jackie would say, "Okay, that's our lesson for the week. You know what you need to work on. I'll see you next week." Was it? I mean, would you say that you were going? Were those the kinds of lessons? Was it practice or was it lessons for Odean Pope with Train?
Well, it was both. Train, he would call me up. I would go over to his place. He lived on 33rd Street. And I would go over to his place sometime. And the other times, we would meet at Hassan and Manali's place and just play Hassan and Manali's tunes. Hassan and Manali had some very complex compositions, and we used to play, plus we used to exchange solos and just get together. But the basic form of Train's whole concept was developing long tones, developing all kind of scales, because his philosophy was so unique. And I got so much from just playing those scales and all of the keys. We would start at the low B flat, play the B flat scale all the way up to high F, then go back down, then play the B scale all the way up to all the way up to high F.
I love this.
We would play the whole range of the instrument, and we would just continue that until we played the whole cycle. Then we would come back and we would play octaves from the low B flat to the high F. But those particular studies were so unique and so profound. I learned so much from that. In fact, I still add that to my studies. When you call, I was going through my procedure plan, my scales, because I play scales every day. Scales are the fundamental concept of playing any instrument, because it enables you, gives you the flexibility to not to be restricted to play either in the key of B or in the key of C sharp or in the key of whatever key that somebody would say the tune is in. You would have some knowledge of that key. And that's what I got from playing with John Coltrane and also playing different scales and playing with, piano players.
This is, we're already burning with Odean Pope. I think also, would you say that the discipline of learning all the scales, it allows it after a while to be, even though you still do it today, it becomes a bit second nature, and then you're able to really start to work on your own individual sound. Is it fair to say that?
Yes, that's very good. Yes, I was able to play and not capture his sound, but if you notice on the Max Roach Giant Steps, I were playing my sound.
Yeah, that's Odean Pope's sound. I love it, man. That is your signature sound. I could have listened to that solo went on for 5 or 6 minutes. That thing was just burning away. And I'll tell you, but Odean, I want you, first of all, can you tell me this piano player's name again? I can't totally understand that.
Hassan Eminali, Hassan Emali.
Now, did he ever? That was his Muslim. Did he have a Western name or no? That was just what he went by.
Well, that was his religious name, Hassan Eminali. He was a Muslim.
And I want, I'm as a 37-year-old broadcaster. I just want to know how much you guys were channeling the stories of your ancestors, how much you were trying to tell the story of what I consider to be, when I listen back to the music of Train, Odean Pope, Jimmy Smith, Pharaoh, there's an anguish cry. There's a cry of your ancestors there, a burning. There's also a burning. It's not a despair. It's this need, this urgency, this push towards equality. And I want you to tell me, put me in my place. Tell me if I'm dreaming or not, and the same thing goes for Max Roach. But
I think you right on it. See, you are very knowledgeable of what you're talking about, and I have to agree with that 100% because that's exactly what it's about. The Baptist Church. I was raised up in the Baptist Church. Train was raised up in the Baptist Church. I used to speak in the Baptist Church. I used to sing when I was around 6 or 7. It was mandatory that you go to church every Sunday. And the first thing, my parents, they both was educators, and they insist that I must go to church every Sunday and be a part of the ceremony and be a part of all of the activities that was going on. Not just go there and sit down, but be a part of it.
I love it.
So I think that gave me a sense of being a part of, like John Coltrane one time. No, John Gilmore one time. I'll give you an example of what happened. John Gilmore, the guy was interviewing John Coltrane, and the guy said, Train, I think you took something from John Gilmore. So Train's response were, well, I tell you what, we are all in this whirlpool together, so you might be absolutely correct. So to give you a sense of the nucleus of what we do, it based back to the Baptist Church, the old hymns and the modern hymns that we used to do and we used to sing. It had a lot to do with the spiritual activity. And I think when you hear my plan or you hear Train's plan and Pharaoh's plan, it's a cry for world peace, come together collectively and let's all love one another. I think that's what you hear in our music. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I just finished, I don't know what I told you, I just finished a project. Annually, I play at the Blue Note Jazz Club with my saxophone choir once a year, ever since 2004 when I did the thing with, I featured Michael Brecker, James Carter, and Joe Lavana. This project that I did a year ago was featuring James Carter, Farrah Sanders, Jerry Allen, Reggie Workman, and Jeff Tame Watts. As a matter of fact, I'm working on that now parallel with the residence that I have at the Clef Club here in Philadelphia. So that's going to be coming out soon. That's my latest project.
Could you share a story that you, as a 6 or 7 year old, you told to the congregation?
Well, my parents instilled so much confidence. They told me to always look for the next opportunity, always look for the next possibility that you can involve yourself with something, that you can be a part of something, because the more you are part of, the better you're going to be. And the more information you have, the better your lifestyle is going to be. Information to me is like eating my lunch, my dinner, my breakfast.
Yeah.
So information is very, very important to me. And I think the bottom line, information is the secret to whatever you come out to try to do.
I guess what I was getting at is you made this very interesting point without actually articulating it, about this passivity of showing up to church and just and being there, or actually being proactive and being part of it as a young boy. And being that I'm, I really was, I'm Jewish, Catholic, sort of a mix, never was raised in either way very strongly. I just wanted to hear about your proactivity within the Baptist church as a young kid. Like when you got out there and you said something and it resonated and you realized that what your parents were telling you was validated at that point.
Yes, well, the Baptist church, I used to sing, like I said earlier. I used to sing, I used to speak, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Children's Day. It was always some kind of activity that I was a part of. I used to go to Sunday school. I used to, from age 4 or 5, I remember going to the Baptist church. And the Baptist church was always trying to bring people together collectively and do very good things, very things that would bring people together collectively and do good things.
Well, we got a game on this program called Name That Tune, Odean. So we're going to put this in, take a listen to it for a couple minutes, and we'll come back and break it down, okay?
Okay, very good.
music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by the Circle Tree Ranch, the Stereo Hospital, and the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, and we thank them for their support. All right, Mr. Pope, what do you got for us, brother?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. The thing that I would like to tell all of the young players is to be true to your own highest conviction, whatever that might be, whether it's educator, whether you are a school teacher, professor, doctor, whatever it is, be true to your own highest convictions, dedicate yourself to it, and you will be rewarded for it. You will be in the loop with all of the people who are trying to do something very positive.
That was called the tune. That tune was called "Catalyst Is Coming" by a quartet.
Catalyst Coming by Catalyst.
And I got to tell you, Odean, at that point when that band came together, Bobby Kennedy had been assassinated, Martin Luther King had been assassinated, Coltrane had left us. Watergate was beginning to come into play. I just want to go to this thing about young people with convictions. Okay, I got to tell you, and I want to ask you this. Do you believe that it was easier for you guys to channel, once you learned the technical aspect of your instrument, was it easier to channel your own convictions because society was more straight ahead and more honest, as opposed to now, where there just seems to be a huge amount of deception that has crept into all facets of our society, a lot of pessimism? All I'm saying is that all the cats from your generation, you could put on a record and you know who's playing just by their own sound. It's harder today, and I wonder if if we live in a less honest society now, and I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, I think each generation, they contribute something. And that's what makes this music so beautiful. Every generation have a voice, and I welcome that because I'm an educator and I teach a lot of young people. One of my pride students is Justin Fawson. He's playing with Branford Marcellus now. Mm-hmm. And one of my other students is Emmanuel Wilkins. He got a full, complete scholarship to Juilliard. And he played with my saxophone choir in New York City at the Blue Note when he was just 16 years old. This year, he's 17. He's going to Juilliard. So what I'm saying is information, again, I can't stress how important information is. And each generation is going to bring something different to the table, and that's very important. To develop your own sound. Max Roach used to always tell me, he said, Odean, a lot of people are asking me, why am I keeping you in my band? So he said, I tell them the reason I'm keeping Odean Pope in my band because he's trying to develop his own sound, and that's what it's about.
That is so cool.
And so you can say anything, you have to develop your own voice. Your voice during that generation with Max Roach, Thelonious Monk, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis. Immediately you could tell who was playing when they played, when you heard that. I'm not hearing so much of that now. It's sometimes it's hard to actually say who is playing when you hear them play now.
And what you're the perfect person to ask because, you guys, you were playing 6 nights a week when you joined Jimmy Smith. You would play all the time live on the bandstand with Roach or the Catalyst. And younger cats, yes, they're getting scholarships to Juilliard, but Odean, there's different types of ways of getting information. You guys were street scholars. How hard?
Yeah, you know what, Max? It's surprised you said that. You know what Max used to always
tell me
when he would introduce the double quartet. The double quartet consists of 2 violins, viola, cello, trumpet, tenor saxophone, bass, and drums. And when he would introduce us, he said, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the musicians who came from the streets of the education."
Right.
And what we used to do, we used to get together every day practically. Lee Morgan and I, we used to play duets together. Reggie Workman, he had an old hearse, and he would get all of the musicians, Spankety Breast, Lee Morgan, C Sharp, all of the great players during that time. And we had a place we used to go and play almost every day. We would get together, Lee Morgan and I would play duets. Then after we played duets, we would go someplace and play. I admit, the young musicians today, they don't have that kind of activity. We always had some place to play. I can't mention how many clubs in Philadelphia that you could play. It was on Columbia Avenue. There was about 10 clubs that you could play. Downtown, they had Showboats, they had Peps, they had the Woodbine Club.
Earl Theater.
It was just many, many, many clubs where you could play and go and not only play, but go and listen. There was a place in particular called the Woodbine where all of the musicians, after hours, they would go and play from 3 to 6 in the morning. And I remember Hassan Eminali was that great creator, innovator.
Yes.
I don't know whether are you familiar with Hassan Eminali's music?
Well, now you're making me. I'm on this whole trip now. I'm so obsessed with this guy. I've never heard of him. No, never.
Yeah, well, Max Roach was the only person who produced him because he was in Elmo and Thelonious Monk school. But like I say, his technique was so great. I've never heard a piano player play like him. He had technique. He could make a ballad, the most complex piece, sound good, and he could make the most simplest piece sound good. But during that generation, there were so many places to play, and when we would go to the Woodbine Club, I'll never forget. When Hassan would get on the keyboard, all of the tenor players would get off the bandstand except for Train, Jimmy Heath, and myself.
I just spoke
because his harmonic concept was so advanced, they just couldn't hear it. They couldn't play. They couldn't play with it. But I was determined because he lived about 2 blocks from where I lived. And one day when I was around 15, he came past. I was in the basement practicing. He came past and knocked on the window. And he asked me would I be up for practicing with him. So that's how Train and I got together because Train was practicing with him already. And I used to go past, and Train used to be there. We used to get together and just play. But the answer to your question, it was so many places to play that it would, if you didn't develop something during all these places, if you go, you just didn't have it.
Well, but also, but here's the other thing. Like, okay, so you are a teacher still. People get scholarships to these prestigious. I mean, Juilliard did not have a jazz program in the 60s. Okay, you guys, there were no rule books. There are song books today. There's so much information out there. Yes, but the idea of taking it one step further to say, you know, I'm not going to classicalize this so hard. I'm going to burn. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to find new portals. I'm going to find new ports of entry. I just feel now it's really hard within the 4 walls of academia to come up with something on your own if you were always being inundated with other people's music. I mean, to me, it's like, you know, I'm sure there are scavengers out there, people like, you know, yourself in the basement blowing, and there are, but it's not to me, it's this shift towards this classicalization of jazz, and it bothers me. I'm not against classical music, but I don't hear, you know, you talk about the fusing of African rhythms with European classical music, and people say that's jazz. So I don't hear the African rhythms as much. I don't hear the polyrhythms as much anymore. And I say to myself, there's just not as many cats that have a chance to get up on the bandstand night after night, make mistakes. I mean, Train would go up to Miles, and Miles would turn his back on him. And Train finally realized, oh, he hired me because he wants me to play what I'm feeling inside. And that those opportunities don't exist any. I guess what I'm saying is, where do they exist now, Odean? I mean, how do aside from going to the Blue Note where everybody's paying $75 and eating their calamari, I just want to hear Odean Pope blowing till the dawn, man.
Well, you know, that's a very good point. You made a very good point. Max, I had the opportunity to play with Max Roach the last 22 years of his life. And I can't overemphasize how much I learned from this great man, because not only was he one of the greatest percussionists that walked planet Earth, he was also a great humanitarian. He was very given. He was always like to share his ideas and concepts with his group. And he had a keen eye for people who were striving to be something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So when Jimmy Murray introduced me to him in 1978, actually 1967 was when Jimmy introduced, I worked with Max for 1 year. That 1 year told me that music was going to be my livelihood, because I had traveled all over the world with Max. It was Charles Tolliver, Stanley Carroll on piano, Jimmy Murray on bass, and myself. And traveling with Max all over the world and all of the information, it was like going to the highest university in the whole world.
Absolutely.
So I came back home. I studied with Dennis Sandoli. I studied with Jimmy Murray. I studied with Max. I studied with everybody, Hassan Emanali, John Coltrane. And it was just a whole host of people that I was getting information from. And this information that I acquired, I kind of channeled it into my concepts, because I also had ideas and concepts about everything that I've learned. So I always try to utilize and involve myself into the information that I had acquired.
Talking to Odean Pope here on the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210 here in Tucson. Odean, can you tell me a great story about collaborating with Pat Martino, maybe the first time you collaborated with him?
Pat Martino is no doubt is one of the greatest guitarists, if not the greatest that's walking planet Earth today. When I first heard him, Pat was probably around 19.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing with a keyboard player by the name of Trudy Pitts.
Oh, the organist, yeah, B3.
The organist. And she was playing keyboards in the beginning, and then her husband introduced her to the B3.
Billy James,
But
right? Billy James.
He played with Trudy Pitts and Mr. C for a number of years, and I used to be there. Any place that I knew that they was working, I would be there. And Pat was another guy. He was always trying to reach for the next thing that was going to make him different from other guitar players. And he was so gifted and so talented. At age 19, he had his own voice. He had developed his own voice, and we used to talk, and I used to go and sit down and listen to him. I've never heard a guitar player play lines like he was playing. He was playing lines that were just incredible. Almost, you would say, how is he doing this? You know,
right.
Because his lines were so complex and so different. That's what made him stand out.
Was it like beyond the blues bass, beyond flamenco, beyond like what could you I hate labels, but could you find a way to describe what he was doing aside from just being like a machine gun fire coming out of him?
Well, what he was doing, like I said, like with that Hassan, he was like a Hassan.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was playing with Trudy, and Trudy was playing standards. Sure. But when you hear him solo, he had something else going on with it, you know, other than just playing the chord changes. He had all kind of polyrhythms, 5-tone scales, 6-tone scales, 7-tone scales, and the rhythmic concepts. He had all of those things compiled into one. And he was working extremely hard. You could tell that he was dedicated the way, just looking at him play, you could tell that he was extremely dedicated and had strong convictions about what he was doing. He was a very special, and still is, a very special player.
Pat connected Odean and I, and I'm very grateful for that. He was one of my first if not my first interview. There was just so much love, Odean. I wanted you to. I'm somebody who, I was talking to my wife last night. I can, as a teacher, I can, be very fluid and in a good mood and humorful. I can also become very irascible. So I do have a tendency towards mood swings. And I wanted you to talk about bipolar disorder and how after you have a burning session, could be at the Blue Note now, could have been with Roach, could have been with Lee Morgan, but how do you feel after you are able to channel all of that energy through your instrument? I mean, how does it affect you positively with your condition?
I think my wife had a great deal to do with that, because she was always, for an example, sometimes bipolar make you very, very complex, very different, very laid back, or very extreme. In other words, bipolar can go from one extreme to the next. It's something that you cannot put a label on. Bipolar, if it's not treated properly and is not talked to with one of your doctors, you can be very extreme, and you can be. I mean, it's something that's very difficult to explain. But what I did with my wife and my doctor, I was able to handle it by doing what the doctor was saying and listen to my wife. My wife was a very beautiful woman. She passed. She left the planet Earth 2012. But technically, she's still here with me.
Absolutely.
And she's helping me with my sickness. I mean, it's a sickness just like anything else.
Absolutely. And
for the last couple of years, I've been very peaceful. I've been practicing. I have a big house, and since she passed, I have the big house by myself. A lot of people want to move in, but I refuse to let anybody move in, because I just want my complete freedom to practice. And if I feel like practicing up, I got very good neighbors. If I feel like practicing up to 12 o'clock, I can do that. So bipolar gave me a greater sense of looking into and examining all the things that I'm doing. Because it makes you, it can break you, or it can make you go forward.
Can you talk to the audience? I mean, I want to do part 2 with you really soon, but Odean, can you just talk to the audience about your concept of love? You've talked very eloquently about your parents, but to me, it is a word that it's one of the L's on my show. I think it's something that can be, shown in a lot of different ways, but I just wanted you to give me your concept of love and how Odean Pope brings love to the world.
Well, first of all, you have to love yourself. You have to be willing to listen to people. You have to be humble. If somebody say, well, look, I think if you do it this way, it might be a little better. Now, if you're not able to accept that, which a lot of people today, if you tell them something, they'll say, well, that's from the old school. I don't want to deal with that.
Right.
That kind of attitude is not love. Love is when musicians come together, which people in my saxophone choir, they come down to my house and we practice, and that's love. We get together. We don't have no kind of stimulant, no kind of drugs, no kind of alcohol. We get together, we practice, we talk, we exchange ideas, and to me, that's love. When you can come together collectively as well as individually and try to search for that bright light. There's a bright light. Always look for, like they say, let me be the lighthouse for those who have been tossed on the sea of sorrow. That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, Odean, listen, man. Listen, keep burning, and we'll be in touch. I definitely want to do part 2 with you. We just scratched the surface here, man. I really can't thank you enough.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to talk to people who know what they're talking about.
All right, man. You listen. Keep enjoy that house and keep blowing away. All right.
Thank you so very much.
Cheers, brother. We'll be right back on the Jake Feinberg Show.